Welcome to the Simpler Business Podcast, where we talk about ways to do what you love and serve your people in a way that brings you income and freedom. I'm your host, Marissa Roberts. Join me as I chat with my favorite entrepreneurs about how they simplify their biz so that you can simplify yours. The goal as a business owner is for it to be a success. You want your people to buy your products and book your services, to love the experience working with you, to refer you to others, to have the cash flowing in and enjoy the limitless potential your business has. It all sounds amazing and you're on track to get there. But the challenge of being a successful business owner is that when your business grows, it starts to get a little too big for you to run it all by yourself. We start out wearing all the hats and doing all the things, and we get really good at it because we're passionate about our business and we really want it to succeed. But when things go well, it also means that things get very busy. So we try to cram it all in and be as organized as possible, but there are literally no more hours in the day. And we've started our business for more freedom, not to be chained to the computer 24/7. The juggle is real, and then we notice we start to miss a little thing here, a little thing there. We start to feel a little bit overworked and a little bit burnt out. It doesn't seem like a big deal at first, but when those little misses start to add up, that's when we realize it can make the difference between signing a high-ticket client or losing a high-ticket client. It can affect our deliverability on our services and create a less than spectacular customer experience, leading to less repeat purchases, and then things start to spiral. We don't want that for you. Those little misses are a sign that it's time to scale and systemize and hire and delegate before it all gets to be too much for you. But as a sole trader, you have no idea how to do that. The idea of taking time out from your business to hire and train someone else feels like it's adding more work to your plate, not freeing you up. And yes, it's important in the long run, but we tend to go, oh, I'll just put it off until I have a bit more breathing room to do it. Except that time is never going to come. So my guest today is more than familiar with these kinds of entrepreneurial worries and is here to walk us through a few points that make bringing in people to help you in your business a little less scary and a lot less complicated. After 2 decades of leadership roles in the corporate world, founder of Idomeneo Enterprises, Vicky Brown created the Leader's Journey Experience, an education program specifically designed to equip entrepreneurs and business professionals with the tools, guidance, and confidence to navigate the sometimes complex world of HR in a less complex way. With 20 years expertise in human resources management, strategy, and transformation, Vicky's HR leadership experience spans various industries, including technology, entertainment, and advertising. An accomplished coach and #1 best-selling author of the book Sing With Your Opera Voice, My Journey from Solopreneur to Entrepreneur, Vicky has dedicated her career and business to providing HR expertise tempered with the day-to-day realities of running a business. She's passionate about empowering entrepreneurs with practical HR expertise and business acumen to help them successfully establish and run their businesses. Vicky, I am so glad you're here because I think this is something that a lot of business owners tend to freeze at. It's that moment of I want to bring in people to help me, but I don't want to do it the wrong way. And so I'm very excited for our chat today.
Oh, I am as well. Thank you so much for having me today. Your introduction, thank you for that lovely introduction. And also the remarks that you made up top were perfect. That's exactly, it's the issue of going from really having a fabulous idea and putting your muscle and your shoulder into it and bringing it into reality. And then you're at a point where you really just don't have enough hours in the day. You can't do it all. And things do start slipping through the cracks. I mean, I'm sure that your listeners have been through it. I've been through it. And you have to do something. So your overview is perfect.
Oh, thank you. It really is an example of what I've gone through myself as well as what some of my clients have said. And it's kind of a pattern, it tends to be, for me, it was the first, I'd say I probably hit 2 or 3 years in my business. And that's when I started to realize, oh, hang on a minute. I'm doing so well, which is great, but I'm starting to forget a deliverable, or not realize I didn't have enough time to accomplish something, or, miss a meeting here and there. And I hated that because I was so passionate about what I did, and I do want to help other people, and nobody makes those little flounders on purpose. And to think that,
Absolutely.
and to think that it's because your business is doing really well is actually a good thing. It's just, how do we handle it? And I think a lot of people are afraid to bring in somebody because they're worried about, okay, now I'm going to be responsible for somebody else's finances. Like, I'll be responsible for their paycheck. That's a big commitment, I think, that people tend to freeze at. And then thinking, hang on a minute, I don't want to do it the wrong way. There are legal things I don't know about. I don't want to underpay. I don't want working conditions to be bad. I don't want to be a bad boss, basically, I think a lot of people struggle with. So yeah, I think
Absolutely. And also, other people can't do it as well as I can do it. They'll never be able to do it my way. They'll never be able to do it as effectively and as quickly. It'll only take me a couple of minutes. I should just go ahead and run that payroll. I can just go ahead and take care of that little accounting bookkeeping thing because it's only going to take me a couple of seconds. It's because as entrepreneurs, we really kind of, I have to say, do have a superhero syndrome going on. And we think we're a limitless resource, and we're not.
That's so true. Do you think that we tend to have the same issues then across the board, entrepreneurs? Do you see those same little hiccups happening again and again?
I absolutely do. And, the issue that you were talking about where all of a sudden something is falling through the cracks, or you didn't quite hit that deliverable due date, those kinds of issues are almost the only time that we kind of get a knock on the head that says, oh, something not good is happening. We really need to address this. Otherwise, we think we can work more or work harder or work smarter. And certainly working smarter is better than working hard. But there is a limit to what one human being can do. And also we negate the fact that two heads really are better than one.
Exactly. And sometimes a fresh perspective, or having the knowledge and expertise of somebody who comes from a different area but can share what's working well, is a really good thing for a business. It's how we innovate. It's how we grow. It's how we keep up with, industry trends and brand new things that are popping up. I get very set in my ways as a business owner because I think it's worked in the past. Why would I change it? And then I have an amazing VA, for example, and when I brought her in, it was just her perspective on the processes that I had. There were little parts that would stop the flow of the process that I didn't even see anymore. And then she came in and she was like, yeah, but what about here where we get stuck? And it was really helpful. Definitely worth it.
It's perfect. And that we forget that particular value. The other thing is, sometimes I can come in and I'm exhausted because I've been working on a project, or I've stayed up too late writing a class or something. Or maybe things are just kind of blah that particular day. It's a Tuesday. I like to call it the Tuesday syndrome. It's not Monday and it's not Friday. It's kind of a Tuesday. And when I come in and I feel like that, I didn't really understand for years and years how energizing it was to be with my team. When I'm engaged with my team, and I see what the work that they're doing and the ideas that they're bringing forth, it really energizes me. Yes, it gives me great new ideas, but it also gives me a little bit of, oomph to move forward and go forward. So I think those are things that we don't think about when we are sitting alone in our home office going, I don't have the money to afford to bring anyone in. And, I'm really glad you mentioned that point, actually, because that is the number one roadblock that I think entrepreneurs mention when they're talking about starting a team or bringing in a team, is that I just can't afford it. And I think what we don't understand, if they're anything like me, I always think, I don't have the revenue to pay that person a year's salary. You're not looking at a year. If you're not bringing in people who can contribute to the business, who can free your time so you can grow the business, then you're not bringing in the right people. I say 3 to 6 months, make sure you have salary for 3 to 6 months. And if they're not really kind of paving the way for you making the revenue to pay for them, then it may not be the right hire.
Wow, that takes a lot of pressure off, actually, because you tend to think it's a long-term commitment, but you really have to see how it's going to go. 3 months or 6 months is a lot easier to handle than a whole year at a time, for sure.
Absolutely. I get a lot less tense when I think about, something like $26,000 instead of $52,000. So
exactly. It's half the pressure immediately. And I think it's good for whoever we bring on too, because they don't feel locked into something either. They feel like, okay, I can put my feelers in and see if I'm enjoying it myself after 6 months. And then, there's no burning bridges if you decide not to go ahead. It's the expectation is there. So that too would take a lot of the mental load away or the mental pressure away. What about in terms of how do we hire people? I know a big question that I get from listeners is, do I hire an actual employee for the company, or do I hire a contractor and bring them on for, say, project work? Or, how do you actually do the setup? What do you think is the most ideal way?
Sure, I get that all the time as well, both from audience members as well as, clients that are coming into us. We've hired contractors in the past. We're not sure what to do now. And there are very specific guidelines, and it does depend on where you are located. So there are US-based guidelines, at the federal level, but states kind of have their hands in it too. And I'm in California. We are known for being, we're the Republic of California. So we're known for having kind of our own way of doing things. And the issue between independent contractors and employees is kind of a hot topic in human resources. And so you really have to look carefully at what your state's guidelines are and what the federal guidelines are. For instance, in California, if the individual is doing anything that is part of what you produce, they cannot be an independent contractor. So if you do marketing, let's say, and your clients, one of the things you provide for your clients is ad services. You write copy for ads or something like that, and you bring in an independent contractor to help with that copywriting, that person cannot be an independent contractor because they're actually providing your product. So there was this really interesting and terrifying lawsuit called the Dynamex decision. And basically, California kind of scrapped. There used to be a list of 21 questions you could ask yourself. And those are the things that most people know about. Do I have control over this person's work? Do I tell them when and where to show up? Or are they just providing a product or a service for me? And that's the way it used to be, kind of bifurcated. But with the Dynamex decision, they kind of threw all that out and said, we're instituting an ABC test. And A and C are fine. Those are the things we know. That's, do you have control? Do they have an office? Do you give them business cards? Do they seem like they're an employee? The B is the problem. B says if they're doing anything that actually is part of the product that you're providing or the service that you're providing, then they cannot be an independent contractor. So again, that's California specific.
That changes the game in California, doesn't it? Because especially from a lot of my listeners are service-based. They are doing things like writing copy for ads or sales pages or marketing materials. So yeah, that's a big eye opener. So anyone in California listening today, that alone, that aha moment, I feel like that's going to change the directory, like the trajectory of how your business is going to go. That's very handy to know. And I think as business owners, we don't know what we don't know, right? In terms of the legal side of things. Yeah.
Right. And that case is, maybe 3 or 4 years old, but there are things that are coming out all the time. And being the kind of, I am a proud card-carrying HR dweeb. So being the kind of HR mensch that I am, my job is to stay on top of those compliance issues, to make sure that my clients don't run afoul of that. The I-9, for instance, is another thing. They just rolled out a brand new I-9 form, and that's all well and good. We have until October to do something about it. The challenge is during the pandemic, when you were doing employment verification and making sure that folks were eligible to work in the U.S., that's what the I-9 form is for. I'm sorry, I'm just throwing out these names, but that's what the I-9 form is used for, and that's a federal guideline. So during the pandemic, they did give us a little bit of leeway. You have to look at the documentation, passport, driver's license, something like that, and then fill out the form, and you have to sign off that you saw the original documents. During the pandemic, they lifted that a little bit because everybody was everywhere. So you could get a copy, you could get them electronically, and you could verify them that way. With the new I-9 form, they snuck in a little extra announcement. Just came out about a week and a half ago, and it said, yeah, all those people that you did the verifications for going back to 2020, if you did not, if for some reason you didn't look at the original documents, you have to go back and re-verify them now. And you have until the end of August. So
Oh my gosh. What if your team is all around the country or around the world?
exactly. So then you have to designate someone to actually look at the physical documents. So, and it's a quagmire because on the one hand, yes, how do you get someone to do that? How do you get the people? How do you enlist the people to do that? And they're looking at private information. I mean, you're looking at social security card numbers and, things like that. But also, what if the employee doesn't work for you anymore? What if the document they provided at the time has expired now? I mean, there are a lot, and they do have guidelines for that, but it just makes it a really complicated process. So things like that, it's my job to look out for things like that and figure out how to fix it. So if folks don't have either a great labor attorney, which I always recommend, or you don't have a human resources consultant that you work with, or maybe a friend that's in HR, then you definitely need to make sure you're staying close to your local chamber of commerce. Labor attorneys are great. They have lots of seminars and lots of webinars and lots of news updates that they send out via email. And so, I know that as a business owner, it can sometimes feel overwhelming. It's a good idea to kind of stay on top of those things, though.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, is that there are people out there who will take this information and help you understand it and help you understand which bits and pieces are very important in terms of things that apply to you. And often it's the little understanding parts. When I look at paperwork that's full of a lot of, I call it legal jargon, but that's just because I'm not familiar with it myself. I look at it and my eyes just kind of glaze over. I don't know which parts are the ones I should be focused on. So to have somebody in my local area that's actually familiar with the laws that are going to apply to me in my business, it's an ultimate time and effort saver anyway. But the protection you're going to get from a legal point of view is going to save hours of stress and effort and fines if you're getting something wrong. I mean, it's a big rabbit hole to go down, isn't it? So it's best to have somebody who's in the know helping you.
It really is. And just doing everything you can to stay on top of it. Some of the low-hanging fruit are things like the minimum wage. It changes all the time. And it's not at the federal level. I mean, different cities now have different minimum wages. So you cross Beverly Hills, the minimum wage for Beverly Hills is different than the minimum wage for West Hollywood. West Hollywood actually has the highest minimum wage in the country right now. Wow. And unfortunately, and we're a West Hollywood company now. We happen to be above the minimum wage, which is great. But a bunch of my fellow business owners had no idea. I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and some of them had no idea that the minimum wage had even gone up. And it's having a significant impact on their budget. And they weren't prepared for it. So it really can be something that, it's one of those things that you don't want to be surprised by. Exactly.
What about things like overtime too? Because the question I get again and again is like, when do we have to pay overtime, especially when you're talking about working remotely or wanting to give people flexible hours so that they can work when they want to, but you need to be able to afford it as a business owner. Is overtime a hot button issue as well that you've noticed?
It absolutely is. You're kind of hitting all of the top hits. But yes, overtime is an issue because, again, it can be different depending on where you're located. So pretty much throughout the United States, more than 40 hours a week is considered overtime, and you're paid time and a half. Okay. There are different twists to that depending on where you are. Again, here in the lovely Golden State, we have overtime after 40 hours in a week, but we also have overtime after 8 hours in a day. So if someone works 9 hours in a day, they're going to get an hour of overtime. If they work 12 hours in a day, they're going to start getting double time. So those kinds of things are important to know. And even just figuring out how much overtime is. Someone has a couple of different rates because when they do this function for you, you're paying them at X rate. And when they're doing that function for you, you're paying them at Y rate. That impacts their overtime. Even something as simple as you're going to give them a bonus. And I can't lay this at the feet of California because this is a federal rule. And I will tell you, I've told accountants this on occasion and business managers, and they just look at me and go, "Are you kidding?" I had no idea. It's called the recalculation rule. So if you're making $5,000 a week and I give you a $1,000 bonus that week, I have changed your base rate now. So your overtime has changed because your base rate went up by $1,000 a week. So I'm not going to do the math because I'm not good at math, but I will say if it went up if the result of that bonus takes you from $10 an hour to $15 an hour, then your overtime is based on the $15 an hour. So you have to go back and recalculate that. Now that sounds troublesome, but not difficult to do when you're talking about a week. But folks don't get bonuses for a week. They get annual bonuses.
Oh, yeah. So that changes the whole scope of it.
It changes the whole thing. And that's a federal guideline. So, if your people are not working any overtime at all, you don't have to worry about it because the only thing that is being impacted is overtime. But that is, those are the kinds of things that it's okay as long as it's okay. But when it's not, it's really not. Because if you have to go backward and pay those missed wages, then you're also subject to not paying them on time, and there are penalties for that. So it can add up.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think everyone has, well, most business owners, hopefully everyone, but I'm sure there's a bad apple here and there. But I know most of us as business owners, we want to do the right thing. Our intention is good. But intention really is irrelevant when we're talking legal and pay and working conditions. It doesn't matter how good a person you are. If you're not up on your requirements, your legal requirements, and you're not delivering on those, you can't really just go, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to underpay you." No one's there's no free pass for wanting to do good things, but just being too busy to be knowledgeable about it. And
absolutely. And the other thing I hear right, exactly. And the other thing that I hear a lot is, well, we're like family. So no one's having a problem with the way they know that I am doing my best effort to really, I give them more time off than is in the policy. I let them go home early, those kinds of things. And that's wonderful because you really should be a human leader. So you should give your employees perks. You should treat them with respect and dignity. You should congratulate them and give them bonuses or perks because they've really produced and they're doing a great job. I am all for all of those things. But unfortunately, the reality is that it's all okay as long as it's okay. But the minute someone isn't okay, they can go back and start looking at history. And you can find yourself in a really surprising but difficult situation because you didn't expect it. So it is better to just make sure you have your I's dotted and your T's crossed.
Yeah. I think it's definitely worth it. It's worth it in the short term. It's worth it in the long term. You can confidently go ahead with growing and scaling your business if you get it right at the start. And if you continuously have a process in terms of keeping up to date with information too, because I imagine you don't get a lot of forewarning when something's about to change, right? Or there might be information out there, but you're probably busy running your business. And so it's hard to stay on top of it.
You are exactly right. It's the second thing. There's so much going on, and the information that you will get before something actually hits is that, oh, a bill has been introduced and it's being argued in the legislature, and this business group and that business group is opposing it and they're asking for comment. That can go on for years. And so we don't pay attention to all that. Otherwise, we would get whiplash, preparing for this, preparing for that, and it never really happens. But then once it gets signed, and typically sometime either in the middle of the year or toward the end of the year, a flurry of things get signed. And depending on when the effective date is, they can sign something in November and make it effective in January, which can really put a crimp in your style.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, so for business owners who have never hired anyone before, then do you have any recommendations for the very first time they're going to hire an employee? Because I know that they'll procrastinate for 6 months, a year. Everything will suffer because they're afraid they'll put a foot wrong or forget something. So what do you think they should look out for when they're hiring for the first time?
Well, I think the first thing that you should do, that first employee is really important. They may not be your employee for 20 years, but they are a critical member of the team because it's the first time you're admitting you're going to delegate something and you're going to hand off some of the responsibilities. But the first thing you need to do is figure out what those responsibilities are. So take a look at everything that you're doing. And I know it can sound like it's time consuming, but you're spending a little time now to really save you a tremendous amount of time later. So look at all of the tasks that you're doing and really put them in a circle. One circle is things that you are really not good at, but you have to do. Only you can do them. Next circle would be things that you're very good at, but you're not the only person who can do them. And the last one are the things that you are very good at that you love to do, and you're the only person who can do them. It's that last circle that ultimately should be your to-do list. Those other things need to really be delegated to someone else. So when you look at the tasks that sit in those other areas, and you can't do it all at once, you're not going to be able to come up with a perfect job description for your very first employee the very first day you sit down to think about this. But it'll at least get you started. So think about the most critical tasks, and I would start with the ones that I don't like to do, because why not make me happy right off the bat? So start with the ones that you don't like to do, and then not only figure out what they are, figure out what skills are necessary to get them done. And yes, there will be some training involved, but you may need the person to walk in with a skill set. Figure out what those skills are, and then figure out, as far as the training is concerned, how are you going to do that? Now, I know a lot of people bring on someone and then figure out how they're going to train them. You should do that before you bring the person on, because it will help you identify who you need to bring onto your team. Once you've done that, now you have a list of critical skills that you need or skills that you're going to train. And so when you put together the posting, which is different than a job description. A job description is an internal document that helps you clarify what you need done in that, the responsibilities you need covered in that job. A job posting is a marketing piece. Recruiting is a marketing exercise. You are marketing to potential employees. So keep that in mind. You want to write it in a way that it's engaging and attractive, particularly in this current environment. Yeah. This marketplace is very tough. So you want to write it in a way that's engaging and attractive, and also clear about what you need, what your expectations are. Once you then have people apply, the toughest part is going through the mountain of resumes. I will tell you that. That's the most difficult part, because there's a lot to go through. Enlist the help of a friend or a colleague if you can. Once you've narrowed that down, then you've got a handful of resumes that you think are potential candidates, good potential candidates for you. As you interview them, you have to do your preparation before you interview. And the preparation is what's on the resume that meets my expectations? What's there that I know I need? What's there that I'm not clear about or is missing? And then what other thing do I need to know about? And your interview is going to focus on number 2 and number 3, things that are there that you're not clear about, and things that simply are not on the resume. And then as you interview the person, there are all sorts of interview styles that people have. But in reality, what I want you to do is really focus in on competency interviewing. And competencies is a fancy HR term for skill set. I don't know why we call it competency, because we just want to be fancy, but it's skill set. So what you're going to do is you're going to really hone in on their skill set, and you're going to do it in a way that you start understanding how they think, because just knowing what someone doesn't really give you all the information that you need to know that they're going to be a fit or not for your organization. You need to know, what is their process for coming to resolution of an issue? How do they problem solve? What are their critical thinking skills? Are they resilient? Those kinds of things you'll get by. So here's an example of a question. Someone says, I'm great at customer service. Okay. Tell me a situation where you were providing customer service to a customer or a client and things didn't go the way that you wanted them to go. So they tell you the situation. How would you have handled it differently? How did you want that situation to go? Where do you think you went left when you could have gone right? How could you have prepared the client more for the delivery of the message that you had to give them that was probably a no? What happened after the fact? What did you do to change that situation from happening in the future? Did you talk to your boss or any other manager about it? Did you do a postmortem? All of those things, you just keep digging in until you have an idea of what their thought process is, because that's what you want. You want people who are aligned with you on problem solving. They may have a completely different skill set, and that's fine, but it's the problem solving and the critical thinking that I find is most important.
Yeah, I love that, because you can train somebody on how to actually do a task, but how they respond to difficult situations is something that is very much internalized, and it's very much based on their past experiences and what they've, people can change and grow, but you've got to have that kind of foundational alignment to your values, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And it's important to keep going in on the situation, continue to ask questions about that situation, as opposed to, another way to approach that situation would be, tell me about a time when you weren't quite happy with the outcome of a customer service situation. What happened? And they tell you a story, and then you move on to the next thing. That doesn't necessarily give you the kind of deep, valuable information that you need.
Yeah. So drill down further, keep asking questions. And I think then you get to the heart of the heart of the example. And I imagine in some instances you'd have people kind of making up scenarios, and the more questions you'll learn, did this really happen? Is this really, I sound terrible saying that.
That's my secret plan. You're absolutely right. Because the more, you can only maintain a creative story for so long. Otherwise, pretty soon the facts don't align anymore. And so you'll be able to tell, because really, I do have clients and business owners ask me, how can you tell if someone's lying? How do I know that they're telling the truth about something that really happened? If you ask enough questions, you'll know.
Yeah, they'll start to forget the little details that never really happened. And yeah, that's a good point. Hopefully that doesn't happen often, but it's really good to have a way to get to know somebody in an interview setting, to draw from their past experiences and the things that make them who they are, but also spot if somebody's not a good fit pretty easily, so that you can move on and not waste anybody's time as well, I think is
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Vicky, you have so much gold to share. I've learned so much just in this half hour. I feel like it's just a starting point too, because I think you're right in that every state, every location, every country is going to have a slightly different version of their laws. And so to know exactly what I should be looking for, that has been so helpful. There have been things that you've mentioned today that have never entered my radar as a business owner. And I should have. I've been working online. I've been running my own business since 2011, but I've never really been aware of a lot of the stuff that can impact the running of my business. So thank you. That's been so helpful. I know our listeners are going to want more from you. So where's the best place for them to find you online? Is it website? Is it socials? Where should they go?
It is absolutely website. And because we have such a wicked name of our company, eDomineo, we don't expect you to go to eDomineo.com. But we do have another site that you can reach me through, and it is morehuman.moreresources.info. And we actually do have a special gift for your listeners. It's morehuman.moreresources.info/podcast gift. So we have a little gift for them if they want to go ahead and click on that link, and we'll get it to them right away.
I'm very excited about that gift, because I know it's along the lines of a bit of a HR checklist or an HR guide to kind of take them along the pathways and hold their hand as they go through it. I think that's going to be such a helpful thing to have, because knowing that first step to take or that direction to go in is really the hardest part of the journey, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're right. It's a workflow that will help them. It's a workflow for new hires, a workflow for terminating. Unfortunately, that happens sometimes, and also a workflow for recruiting. My tongue tied today. So hopefully that'll get them through the process of certainly bringing on their first employee and onboarding them and kind of getting them set up in a way that they can be most successful.
Oh, that sounds really helpful. I'm going to make sure there's a link in the show notes for your website and for that gift in particular as well, because the more help we can get with this sort of stuff, the more confident and the more, relaxed we're going to be about running our business. And it's benefits for everybody once we know what we're doing and we can confidently action these sorts of things. So thank you again. I've loved our chat. I'm excited to learn more. I know our listeners are going to be excited to learn more as well. And guys, if you have any feedback, if you're listening to today's episode, come on over and let us know. You can find me on Instagram. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can head over to Vicky's website. Come and let us know your thoughts on all of the topics that we've talked about today, because they are important ones. And I want to make sure that we cover things that are helpful for all of our listeners so that they get something tangible that they can action straight away. And I think you've really delivered well on that today. So thank you, Vicky.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I've had a great time.
Oh, me too. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to our conversation as much as I've enjoyed having it. And I'll see you all in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Simpler Business Podcast. If you did, please subscribe, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to make it nice and easy for you, just the way we like it. If you're ready to simplify and scale your business, you can get started with my free audio class at marissaroberts.com. See you next time.